Hello, welcome to part 6 of What Did You Do in the Cold War, Daddy? At the end of part 5, we had just established contact with 9 radar returns. This was quite unprecedented in the QRA history that we had known up to that time. The story continues. Dick locked the radar onto each target in turn, and as he did so, he intoned the range, the heading and the altitude of each Soviet bomber. Together with their speed, interpretation of that speed would reveal the possible intention and ambition of each. The formation that the Soviets were flying was well organised, 4 pairs astern of each other by just a very few miles, each pair flying line abreast. What was interesting though, that the lead pair of contacts had a third contact tucked in close on the port side of the lead aeroplane. Left 10 degrees, we need some displacement to get behind them. Okay, but we need to try to get behind all of them. Dick said nothing but waggled the cursor on the radar scope in reply, affirmative. A moment later, hang on, that Singleton is going down, and a minute later, the back pairs are turning around. More commentary followed, again with intermittent instructions to alter our heading, altitude and airspeed. We continued to intercept the front pair, then the plan would be to chase down the Singleton. We rounded up neatly positioned behind, and 2 Tu-16 Badger Delta jet bombers hove into view through my windscreen. We closed up to get a positive identification of their tail numbers. Unlike the quite friendly Tu-95 Bears that we normally intercepted, who incidentally were so noisy that we could actually hear them despite our bone dome helmets and the thick canopy when we came up underneath them. But the Badgers were not at all happy at our presence. A bit like reading body language, short, sharp changes of heading, excessive wing waggling were the order of the day with the Badgers. But Dick took the necessary photographs, and just have here a couple of the Tu-16 Badger. One, and we have another one here. A sleek, quite beautiful looking aeroplane, 2 massive turbojets. Over 1,500 of them were built, and they flew for quite a long time. Had all sorts of roles, missile launch, missile guidance, recce, AEW, and electronic reconnaissance as well, EW. Okay, let's get the third guy. We were now in a tail chase. The target was still descending towards the sea, and fast. Clouds flashed by as we hurtled down in pursuit. The range closed oh so slowly, but we were catching up. Eventually, we got a visual sighting. Another Badger, but so low and skimming the waves. Oh boy, this was fun. Screaming along just above the sea in £1 million at 1970 prices, fully armed and fueled jet fighter, and getting paid for the privilege. However, this was a Badger Charlie, whose normal role was to carry and launch one air-to-ship missile. My reverie was interrupted. You know what, Dick commented, this bugger is playing at an air-to-surface missile launch simulation. He continued, he is the missile. It transpired later that the Soviets had in play a maritime exercise in which they were simulated tracking and attacking the American Sixth Fleet as it sailed across the North Atlantic and into the North Sea. The objective of the Sixth Fleet was to reinforce NATO in Europe in time of tension, when the Cold War was no longer that cold, but turning very hot. The lone Badger played the part of the missile sent to attack the fleet, which were actually on the surface for real, on the surface of that dark and forbidding waters of the Iceland Faroes Gap. Soviet Navy ships playing the part of US Navy. Again, photographs were taken, and we turned about and climbed up, heading north. The radar scanner swept relentlessly side to side, and I could see the telltale indicator that showed a blip. Come there, 40 degrees, centre the dot, commanded Dick, as he locked the radar up. It looked like another simulated missile launch, but this time all we had to do was race directly towards it. Probably launched from the second pair of Badgers that we had seen earlier. We gave ourselves some turning room and flew round behind and slightly below and closed upon its starboard side. Another Badger Charlie, but this time we had no time for photographs. Back north we headed, but alas, to no avail. All the previous contacts were now way ahead and heading northwards themselves. We were in a 200-mile tail chase, and this was one that we had no hope of ever closing down. The bombers were on their way home back to Archangel. A.W. Shackleton ordered us home, and southwards we turned and flew on in silence. This had been a QRA mission to beat all other QRA missions. But as we flew onwards, this direct contact with the face of the Cold War reminded me that this was not actually my first time. More of which later.